Hello and welcome once again to Behind the Screen. I don't know why I'm saying it like in this voice. This is episode 83. This is the second of my Onyx Path Virtual Con 2024 retrospective specials. A standard disclaimer, obviously, I do not speak for Onyx Path, nor is this project official material. All views and opinions expressed are my own. This material will be available to buy. Both actually con games will be on the StoryPath Nexus. Hopefully, eventually. I am merely a grateful fan of the platform. Both of the games that I will hopefully be talking about today, StoryPath Nexus and They Came From Classified, not currently unlocked on the StoryPath Nexus, just with the world below. There we go. And They Came From Classified are not currently unlocked on the StoryPath Nexus, nor is this to be taken as an announcement of their impending unlocking. It's just because I wrote the scenarios for the con, and I figure I might as well polish them to a point where I can sell them when that is a thing that I can do with them. I am disabled. I do experience muscle spasms that can lead to an unnatural movement of my head or neck, as well as a worsening of my normal stamina. Please, I ask for your forbearance with such things. I do struggle with multiple trains of thought. I will try to finish one before moving on to the next, and if you raise a point in chat, I will try to acknowledge it before continuing on with what I'm talking about, otherwise I will get horrendously lost on a digression. I am also out on the tail end of a cold still, those of you who were present for the Exalted Essence Session 0 on Friday. That cold is still very much in my system. It's incredibly lingering and incredibly annoying. I am going to hydrate as much as I can. I'm going to try to get all the coughs out of the way by muting the microphone, but I apologise if you know, for any that I miss, let's say. That said, of course, the elephant in the room. It's not really an elephant in the room, I guess. The important things to note before we get started with the stream itself. Monday meeting notes, best place to go for anything regarding Onyx Path stuff. Obviously, this section of my show has gone through some evolution over the course of 83 episodes. And Ms. David, have you kindly asked the cold to go away? You know what? I did. Both Angel and I have had it. We have both kindly asked several times, and it's still here. Obviously, I just use this part of the show to go through the Monday meeting notes and try to figure out what's like the important bits. Usually, just the things to promote, let's say. And the big thing right now is that later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, which, if my maths are correct, is 3 hours after the show should end. So in like 4 hours and 50 minutes. Let's try the Nightbot command. Hey! The Mythic Shards backer kit campaign for the next Scion supplement will be launching on, again, backer kit. I've dropped the link in chat. Please click it and sign up, or if you're watching this after the fact, you can see the URL beneath my face. I think the call to action URLs still work. I think they just take you to the active campaign. I could be wrong about that. Mythic Shards, however, is a book of alternate settings for your Scion games, covering the full gamut from Origin through to God. I'm assuming, based on everything I've read, that additional shards settings, micro settings, sorry, will be stretch goals and things of that nature. So that's exciting. If you are interested in that, an hour after this show ends at noon Eastern, creative lead Hiromi Kota, as well as some of the writers on the book, will be vibing here at twitch.tv/The Onyx Path and talking about the cool book that they made and are hoping will get funded on backer kit, as well as stretch goals and things of that nature. And then more Scion Mythic Shards madness for you all. If that is not enough, Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Central European, or whatever the current time zone is in Europe, is a Scion Mythic Shards actual play of the After the End Shard, which is a post-apocalyptic setting for your Scion games. It is a setting where all of the apocalypse has happened and the gods are dead. In vibes based entirely on the graphic that has been chosen to accompany it, Mad Max, but the whole world, rather than just Australia. But the important themes of the setting are kind of what it means to be a god, because there are still gods. There are still scions, obviously, otherwise why would you be playing the game in this setting? But there are no gods, so it's all about defining who you want to be as a god, as well as dealing with the dangers of the world after the end. Yeah, so that's Wednesday, 2 PM Eastern, if you are interested. I am playing in that, which is incredible. Yeah, I'll also be in chat as a moderator, so behave if you do swing by to watch it. Other than that, the Curseborn push continues. There'll be more Curseborn information. Another Curseborn related item going on sale on Wednesday, or being announced on Wednesday, I should say. But the Ashcan, final version of the Ashcan, will be available in PDF and print on demand on Wednesday. So if you have not yet picked up the Curseborn Ashcan and you're interested in the horror genre as a role playing, if you're interested in role-playing in the horror genre, there we go. Please do consider swinging by Drive-Thru-RPG and picking up the Ashcan, either print on demand or PDF. Also, a lot of Onyx Path's catalogue will be on sale for 2 weeks in the annual Christmas in July sale over at Drive-Thru-RPG, Drive-Thru-Fiction, Storyteller's Vault, and Roll20 Marketplace. If you are intrigued about such things, Awkward GM, who usually has a show on this channel after this, but hey, the Mythic Shards kickoff is between us. It has a preview video up on YouTube linked in the Monday meeting notes. Just scanning through, seeing if there's anything else pinging from my brain that is, relevant, I guess. I don't think so. So things at press this week. I think I'll just skip out all of the other updates because they're there for you to read. But unless it's pertinent to the thing I'm talking about, but there's nothing for classified or the word below in the updates. Well, actually, there was classified stuff, but it's in that press anyway. So, reprints, Scion Origin and Trinity Continuum Core reprints have begun their long voyage overseas to Studio 2. Exalted Essence shipping has begun for retail stuff. Question, what is At the Gates? At the Gates is... did I say At the Gates? I don't know. At the Gates is the second game in the Earthbane cycle, following on from the world below. It's not the same world. It's inspired by JRPGs and things of that nature. It's a different approach to fantasy role playing. You didn't say it was in the pre-roll? Ah, there we go. Yeah. The New Game Plus thing, I believe, is Awkward GM doing prep for an At the Gates game. I could be misremembering. It's been a while. So that's what that show is. That's what that show is. It's prepping for a game. But yeah, it's JRPG inspired fantasy storytelling using the StoryPath, fantasy role playing using the StoryPath system. That behind the world below and a lot of other Onyx Path first party games. Metroid's Lore of the Traditions, Exalted 3rd Edition, Exigence Book and Screen, Trinity, Continuum, Ether and Anima, Exalted 3rd Edition Sidereals, the Jumpstart and the Charm cards for Exalted Essence, Scion, No Gods, No Masters, Trinity, Continuum, Ether, they came from Classified, and Cyclops Cave rulebooks and screen. And the Curseborn Ashcan are all the things at press this week. Obviously, a lot of things remain at press for a while because it takes a while for books to ship from the printer to wherever they're heading. But that is a snippet of Onyx Path stuff at the moment. I also realised that because this show does happen the week after the Exalted Essence actual play, I could use this moment, this opportunity to kind of reflect on the session that was just played. So I might do that. It wastes time unless I've got anything else particularly to talk about. But I figured, I have the platform. People might be interested. It went well. It was session 0. It was character creation. You will see in the first session that some things have changed. I made one change on my character sheet. Probably going to be working and looking down. I should just do that and not say anything. Followed a few weeks ago and I was searching Twitch for WOD content. Well, welcome in, Levita. This show specifically is not about WOD content right now, unfortunately. This is more about me just writing content and explaining how you two can do community content. I have had a series on... I did a series where I wrote an adventure for the Storyteller's Vault. I'm proud of that adventure. I've yet to run it myself. I've yet to hear how it goes for other people, but it's out there in the world. Actually, I should do that at some point. I will add that to my mentor to-do list. What was I? Yes, Exhaust Essence. When I was going over my character notes and putting together a cheat sheet for myself, I realised that I didn't want 2 familiars, right now at least. So I replaced one of my spells. That's the change. And yeah, welcome to the channel as Plastic Age Plays. I have communicated said change with Plastic Age Plays, who is my GM story guide, storyteller. Sorry, is it storyteller? I assume storyteller for Exalted Essence, and hopefully they're cool with it. Yeah. Not really anything else to reflect on, because it was character creation. I guess just something to be aware of when it comes to like character backstory and stuff. Right now, I just gave relevant information regarding my intimacies, and I will be building on it from there. Started playing some TTRPGs lately, thought I should follow some more related content on here. That is... good idea, Levita. There are plenty of fantastic actual plays on this channel as well. This show is an oddity, I guess. But there's, off the top of my head, looking at the schedule, there'll be an actual play on Wednesday, which I'm in. I think there's one on... Hang on. You know, I could just look at the schedule rather than try to do it from memory. That would be smart. Sometimes, chat, I have one brain cell and it's not working properly during a cold. Wednesday has an actual play. Wednesday has 2 actual plays, actually. And Sunday has another one. Scion, Wednesday. Curious Cats Are Out, Wednesday. And Trinity Continuum Aeon also. That's on Sunday. An uninterrupted 7-month streak. Hell yeah. Oh, 57-month streak. That is impressive, Plastic Age Plays. My changes are good. Fantastic. While you're here and I'm thinking about it, as we play and I explore the character, I will of course send you any more backstory snippets that occur to me. That's just how I approach character backstory writing, rather than having it all set in stone to begin with. Seeing how the people do creation of characters and behind the scenes stuff is good too. Fantastic. Well, that's what this show is about. So let's get to it. So last stream I did, I began this retrospective on Onyx Path Virtual Con. Sorry, Onyx Path Publishing Virtual Con 2024, and kind of explained the behind-the-scenes process of of my involvement in it, I guess, because I can't speak for everyone's involvement, obviously. But it was probably quite dry. Talking to people in chat, obviously, going on slight digressions and things of that nature. But I did get around to my 2 adventures and give you kind of a very surface level retrospective, I suppose. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about today is probably going to be repeated because I didn't have the time or inclination to rewatch the last stream. But it also works out because that stream's going up on Onyx Path Publishing's YouTube channel with all of the other con stuff, because that just made sense to me to give them, to say they could do that. And then this one, because it's more about my stuff, will be going up on my YouTube channel. So for my YouTube audience, it means that you're not really getting anything terribly repetitious. Hopefully, at least. And hopefully it's something more interesting, let's say. As I say, if you've heard this before because you're a long-term viewer of the show, or you're on, you subscribe to, or you follow the Onyx Path channel, or if you watch this on Onyx Path's YouTube channel, and or you watched the last one on Onyx Path's YouTube channel, sorry, and you're coming to my channel to watch this one, apologies, but that's just the way it works. It's also at least a week since I recorded this stream, so you don't really have any, I can't do anything. So, con games, specifically. So, I have talked before on the channel about, and I will no doubt talk again on the channel about my ethos for introductory games. Please see, I think it was season 2 and 3 of the show. I think I did 2 intro games back to back. I did Scion, A Rude Awakening, and Chronicles of Darkness, The Radford Estate. And I kind of talk through those a lot about how I approach writing introductory games, and a lot of that does carry over to the con games I wrote, but it's not, because it's not for the same purpose. I made some slight changes to it, to my formula. I mixed it up in that I just used a different formula, and I'm going to take this time now to walk you through that formula. So my personal feeling is that when you buy or sit down to play an introductory game, you're already bought into the game, right? Theoretically, you have the core rulebook, you know roughly the themes of the game. Presumably you've had a conversation with your GM about how the game works at a very surface mechanical level, if nothing else. And there is a remarkable degree of freedom within that to play with the system and with the rules. As a swift recap, I suppose, for those who are new to the channel, my ethos for introductory games follows a 3-scene structure. It is a low-stakes scene, usually social, to introduce the dice rolling mechanics and things of that nature. Then it's more of an open-ended exploration scene, usually an investigation of some kind, to introduce that side of the game for games that have investigative elements, or just to allow the players to start flexing their creative muscles once they get a feel for their characters. And then the final scene is usually an action climax to demonstrate how the combat system works in the game. There may have been combat in it before, but I will usually have that resolve as like one roll combat rather than a full extended combat scene or action scene or whatever you want to call it. Greetings, hope everything's doing well. Welcome in, Darth Chaos. Welcome in. Everything is going swimmingly so far, apart from the cold that still lingers in my brain and sinuses. So that's how I approach introductory games. With a con game, it's different. With a con game, huge caveat: Onyx Path Virtual Con, obviously a very different beast to most cons, and it's also the only con I've ever run a game for. But I wrote these as if I were running it for a different con. So with the con game, obviously, a lot of the time, all you've got is the name of the system, maybe a brief description of the one shot, and hopefully an evocative adventure title. And the idea being, at least in my understanding, as someone who does not attend role-playing cons because I can't afford to, is that it's a chance to play games you might not already play, but it's also a chance for perhaps the publisher or the game's creator to sell you on the game so that you then go and buy it, because everyone is at a con to make money. Hopefully. So a con game has to not only convey how to play the game in an easy to understand format, but it also has to convey the game with its themes and moods and what you can see clearly is listed as vibes. So when I know, slightly different for my classified adventure, but for the world below, because it is more of a traditional OSR feeling game, with a very defined setting, with the adventures with everything in the game taking place within that setting, more or less. If you want to explore the world above, sure, go for it. but for the most part, everything happens within the very defined limits of the game. That you obviously can do what you want with it. It's a game. The writing team isn't going to come and visit your house and rip the rulebook up if you use it wrong. But it lends itself to a certain style of gameplay. Let's see. So let's say. So when I sat down to write this scenario for it, obviously the first thing I needed to figure out was what aspect of the game that I wanted to address, to convey, not only for my players, who I expected probably would be first time The World Below players, but also to the audience, because it was for an actual play. And slight caveat here that writing games for actual play purposes is different, maybe the wrong word, but let's say adjacent to writing. It's got an ever so slightly different purpose, particularly as, you know, I wanted the audience to be able to follow what was happening. So yeah, I had to figure out which bits of the game specifically I wanted to focus on when I was developing the adventure. And for me, at the very least, when I was writing this, the big draw for me with The World Below is the core themes of regret versus hope. Like, yes, we're trapped in the world below. The world above wants to kill us. The well is a source of unfathomable, uncontrollable power that will kill us eventually anyway. So what is the point in continuing? And did we do this to ourselves, functionally speaking? But then obviously there's the hope side of things of we're alive, we have community, we have a community, we have reasons to keep going, so we will stand firm against the darkness, we'll weather the calm season, and we will, we'll push on, we will live, we will be the light in the dark. Which I'm always a sucker for that as a theme. And then the stagnation versus change thing, you know, it's easy to stagnate when you are in a bounded environment where everything wants to kill you. It's very easy to become insular communities, each of you convinced that you are the only ones who know how best to stand against the world below and to survive, versus change, you know, opening the communities up, accepting that things will change, that the season of calm will happen and the tunnels around you will change and new opportunities will present themselves on a near daily basis, let's say. So those are my those are the two big themes that I like in The World Below, and from those vibes, it's melancholy and hopelessness, and how those factors all draw together. Sorry, I have an email. It might be. I'm kind of waiting on a couple of emails right now for a variety of things. Excellent. Work things. Very good. I like knowing that there's a contract on the horizon. So those are the vibes and the themes I wanted to push towards with my adventure, and because this is there is a huge difference between writing a one-shot with a specific purpose in mind and writing a one-shot to play with friends. I think I mentioned this before on the show, but if I have, forgive me. But with con games or con games specifically require a certain amount of, not necessarily railroading, but bounding, let's say. The players have for this at least, I wanted the players, because they were new to the game, and I've run enough games now, I've run enough introductory games across a variety of systems to know that maybe 6 times out of 10, a player will freeze when you give them... A first-time role player will freeze when you give them an open world to explore. So when it's when the game is designed to introduce them to a system, I will often have a defined list of things that they can investigate, purely because I don't like making players uncomfortable. And I would much rather one player feel that they're being slightly railroaded than have another player check out because of analysis paralysis. For me, very much the lesser of two evils. I don't like railroading players, but equally, with a con game with a strict time limit for a specific purpose, I will do the minimum railroading possible, but I will do it. Do you hear me? I will. But it also works out when it comes to writing for community content. It's the next step in the railroading discussion. When writing for a purpose, when you're writing an adventure for community content purposes, obviously, to include a complete adventure, you also need to have some what could be perceived as railroading, but around that you can include options that the players could investigate. You can include advice about how certain aspects of the game can be fleshed out or built upon or expanded. Built upon and expanded both mean the same thing. So when it comes to writing community content, which obviously most of what this show is about, I do try to do that, or at least leave enough threads hanging that you can build upon them in your own way. If you go back and watch the Scion, the Rude Awakening season of the show, which I think was the second season, because the first season was me doing my own D&D campaign prep on my channel, and watch it, I've developed a lot since then, and there's things I did in that adventure that I probably would do quite differently now, but a lot of it holds true. But for me, there aren't enough open-ended story seeds in that adventure. I think there are two story seeds in the second scene, and I think that's it. My goal, hopefully, with a future season of the show, is to write a follow-up for Scion Hero to the Rude Awakening, and then as part of that season go through and remaster the Rude Awakening, so that it's up to date with where I am now. Probably provide access to the older version. I won't delete the file, I'll still let people download it, but I'll make it clear that it's an outdated version just for like archival historical purposes. Railroading is a subject which honestly should have an article written on it, specifically the situation when it should be done and when it shouldn't be done. Another 2 or 3 articles could probably be written on methods of railroading. The day the engineer in me is coming out. No, for sure on Stable Days. Railroading, maybe the next stream of the show should be like storytelling styles, and I will address railroading and sandbox play and things of that nature. I'll be honest, Travis is being wonderful behind the scenes and has been, allowed me to take time when I needed with the show over the past year and a bit. But I am just taking on more community content at this point is just too much. I'm doing a lot behind the scenes. Anyway, hello, welcome to the channel. Hoi Leper. I apologize for any mispronunciation. Hopefully you're doing well. What's Brewing? What's Brewing is I'm doing a retrospective of Onyx Path Virtual Cons. The actual plays that I wrote and ran. Let's call you Hoi? I will call you Hoi, if I remember. So yes, so some railroading in adventures for community content, but you can be more open-ended with those because certainly for me, my expectation is that, once I write the adventure and I put it out into the world, people are going to make it their own anyway. So if I just give the tools to make it their own, then it's better value for money, right? And then obviously at the other end of the scale, when you're writing an advent, not even just a campaign, but maybe a one shot or an extended one shot for your characters, for your home game, you can be a lot more freeform. I still, when I'm writing one shots for my friends to play through, with no intention of writing them out long form in any way, shape, or form, I still have an idea of what themes I like to investigate with that one shot, or with, in fact, a whole campaign, because knowing, I find that knowing what themes the adventure, story, whatever you want to call it, is built around, allows me to have that thematic core for improvisation. Entirely necessary to explain those three things, because for the purposes of this was a con game, which I narrowed down the vibes and themes for, and I used those to direct what I wrote, and every time I finished a scene, and there are only 3 scenes, I went back and checked whether what I had done kind of matched up with a vibe or a theme I wanted to explore. Something to note about the world below is that depending where you are in the world below, different regions have different chaos levels, which affect, in extremely reductive terms, they affect spellcasting. This isn't really time or place to go into it. But suffice to say, the chaos level of an area affects the spellcasting. Now, there are exceptions, obviously. You can find places in a certain layer that are a higher or lower chaos level than the general for the layer. But I threw it open to my players. I mentioned this last time, but I threw it open to my players as to which chaos level they wanted. I gave them the choice. I explained the difference between the chaos levels. I gave them the choice, and they opted for chaos level 2. So I included that in the universal rules section, just to say, well, to be fair, I wrote it as chaos level 2, but I asked them if they wanted to downgrade to level 1. But yeah, I just included that so that it's clear throughout the chaos level of the area, and also then that means that if you are running this adventure as part of a wider The World Below game, you can take the location within the adventure and you can put it into the crust, because that's where it canonically, air quotes, takes place. It doesn't have to be in the crust, of course. You can put it anywhere you want, but if you want it to, it was written as a belonging in the crust. For more on that terminology and chaos level and spellcasting or chaotic sorcery and things of that nature, I highly do recommend you check out The Word Below when it releases. There is an Ashcan version available, which covers the bare bones of the game, including pre-generated characters and an adventure. But obviously when the full rules release, there'll be a more polished, refined version because they're not an Ashcan. So, yes, so as you can see, I approached writing this out long form as I did with Pugmire, A Ball to Die For. And if I do any more actual plays where I want to write out the adventure for, you know, for selling, I will almost certainly do it in a similar fashion, providing developers' commentary, writers' commentary, what have you, and then important information from the scene, and then any advice about the scene, and then any rules that you need to know. So, as we can see, commentary. Scene is intended to demonstrate how dice rolls work, get the players talking to each other, introduce combat, and introduce people to the strange horrors that wander the world below. All of this is very much pre-editing. Standard disclaimer apply. I will take this away and polish it after the fact. But that was the point of the scene. It's just to get people rolling dice, get them in character, have very simple combat, and have a very immediate introduction to the world below. Again, with the con game, I'm not trying to introduce people to the system. Well, obviously I'm trying to introduce people to the system, but I'm also trying to introduce people to the setting, to the core rule themes of the game. And the easiest way I could think to do that was just a block of read aloud text to introduce the game, to get people kind of thinking about, hey, this is how the game works, this is what the game is, and kind of my big task was, with the themes and vibes in mind, kind of was to distill the essence of what I wanted my players to know about the game, about the setting, of the world below. So I explained chaos extremely briefly. I explained that maps frequently become out of date as the tunnel systems change around communities. I introduce a community from the core rulebook, Glimmerlight. Sorry. And I explain that as is often the case in the world below, something has already gone wrong. And then an icebreaker. Straight up, an NPC asking the characters, what did the waters take from you? Now, when I originally drafted this, my original plan was to have a more of a like, hey, so it's about time you woke up, a soft voice says, who are you? What are you doing here? But I felt that was too aggressive. It didn't provide much of an icebreaker in a way, because that was very much a, this is my character's name, this is a reason for them to be here. So, which is, you know, it's fine, but it's not as thematically appropriate, I feel, to the game. And it also doesn't necessarily demonstrate how the game works particularly. So my goal with what did the waters take from you was, one, to get people rolling dice, which they did, because then I called for a roll for people to remember stuff. But it's also to, A, introduce minor complications, and B, to introduce to people who've never played the game before how the path system works. Had I had more time, I probably would have explained about the paths to my players in the audience, but it didn't really. It wasn't necessary. It wasn't immediate. It's not needed. I just like highlighting all of the different aspects of the character sheet for first-time players in a way that introduces them slowly, so that the players aren't overwhelmed. I'll just punch my desk. My hand is now numb. So they aren't overwhelmed by everything on the character sheet. But it worked well enough. With one player failing, that gave us enough wiggle room for some in-character role-playing, where trying to figure out who they were. And I'm trying to keep spoilers as limited. Sorry, I've got a fan just off screen. And it keeps blowing strands of hair into my face. I know it's annoying to watch. Let's see if trapping it with my headset helps. Yeah, so it worked, is the TLDR. With it being a difficulty 2 roll, you know, it's not terribly difficult to succeed, but if you don't have many dots in Enigmas or your mental skills, you're likely to fail. But equally, it's no big deal if no one fails, because all you're forgetting is your paths. And then the complication, because again, I wanted to introduce complications as early as possible too, because they are a core mechanic in the game. The complication was just, if you didn't buy it off, regardless of what you remembered of what you could remember or not, there's a bot. You wouldn't be able to access your theses, your kind of special abilities, let's say, because you've forgotten them, just until the end of the scene, at which point you'd remember them. Again, all in the name of a simple introduction to how the dice rolling mechanic works, without overwhelming people about, particularly newcomers, about information on the character sheet. And then from that, there is a, like, hey, this is where you are, this is what you see. This is an NPC. There's one NPC in the scene. They are going to give you some exposition, but not much, because they are an enigmatic figure that is ultimately not important to the one-shot in any way, shape, or form. They are there to provide a spotlight focus on the characters with no distractions. This scene is literally the characters on a raft in the middle of a pool, in the middle of a large body of water. Because some players need that focus to prompt role-playing. Again, a lot of it is just figuring out the lesser of two evils and what you are comfortable with. And then once that's done, as I say, there is a simple combat at the end of it to explain. So the encounter has no special rules in the field, lists how many adversaries per character, and all the adversaries I chose are in the World Below's core rulebook. I'm future-proofing it with that, for future future supplements are released. So that's what that's about. Overall, the scene went well, to the point where I don't feel the need to include an advice section in the adventure write-up. Just for like a personal reflection, in hindsight, I maybe should have had a discussion with my players about the tone of the game in advance. That was on me. We didn't have chance for a session 0, what with it being a con game, and it slipped my mind when I was doing the pre-game tech setup to just mention that, hey, this is intended to be a serious game. The World Below itself lends itself to serious games, and that's on me. No one did anything wrong. I just didn't have any tonal expectation, tone setting conversations, let's say. So if you need to make a standard consent form for next year, that's on you. Nah, Plastic Age Players, I have a consent form that I sent out to them, and I'm happy to share it with you. It's just a Google sheet that you can anonymously fill out based on the Monty Cook consenting gaming checklist. I sent that out, but I know not everyone filled it out, and there's also no space on it for tone. So, some players just like playing more comical characters, and that's fine. Even in the grimmest of games, there is space for a clown. I firmly believe that, but maybe not from the get-go, in hindsight. And, that's just a mistake I made. That's fine. I rolled with it. It threw me for a loop, but there we are. Again, that's just a personal reflection on how the thing went. I don't feel the need to include that in the advice. I might, when I polish this up and add an introduction, might have a thing in the introduction about setting tonal expectations. But that's a future problem. Again, please do not take this as an announcement of the World Below having an impending unlock on the Nexus, on the StoryPath Nexus, because this is not what that is. This is not what that is. Sure, why not? I'll go with that. And then because it was a con game, and I didn't want to be flicking through a rulebook, I just copied the rules text from the rulebook into the adventure. I believe this is technically allowed under the rules of the StoryPath Nexus, so I might leave them in. I might mess with the layout slightly. I only had it in 2 columns just for ease of space saving. But you can see there's like a weird orphan thing going on here. Anyway, Scene 2, The Pillar. This is intended to introduce the concepts of both investigations and attitudes, building the foundations of the social investigative systems within the World Below. It's also intended to foreshadow the core of the conflict in Water's Edge, whether the people there should embrace the Water's gift of oblivion or reject it. Pretty much what it says. With the World Below, like most StoryPath games, having a social system, an investigation system, and an action system. They have different titles, obviously, based on the game. Like intrigue, investigation, and action adventure, I think. Whatever. I wanted to include something covering those. And the logical progression, once you have the core role-playing down, is just a simple example of both. The core mechanics down is a simple example of both. So, once again, there is a single NPC in the scene. It's a different NPC, because that gave me the chance to introduce the character as... I don't know if I included this. I did not. So introduce the character as having explicitly a neutral attitude. When in... I've moved my keyboard and it's throwing me off. When introducing Mile, state that their attitude is neutral, and explain the attitude system. I am capitalizing attitude even though it's not capitalized in the rulebook. Oops. Apologies for the typing noises. Something I did in my shill time. Something I did in my Game Jam winning entry for the Onyx Path 2024 Game Jam among the community creators was include page references for that entry. Was an introductory game to introduce people to Trinity Continuum Core, and I stand by it as a solid product. I'm proud of it. I'm not too humble to say it. Imposter syndrome tells me it's terrible, but I'm proud of what I achieved with it. I did everything I wanted to do with it, and to a standard I was happy with, which doesn't happen that often. Something I did in that, though, was provide page references to the mechanics that I was explicitly referring to. Now, obviously, you can see here that I just copied the text into the adventure for myself, and I might leave it in. Again, I believe that it is allowed under the terms of the StoryPath Nexus to include rule snippets, as long as I'm not reproducing the entire rulebook and saying it's and claiming it as my own. I think it's fine. But I like having. I'm going to try in the future to provide page references where possible to the text, so that people running the adventure know specifically what I'm talking about when it's relevant. This is something I will probably add in the Rude Awakening remaster. And just side note, I'd like to remaster that just to move it out of Word into Affinity Publisher, so that it's easier to fix things in it. Because I've had to glance through it a couple of times over the years to check things, and I've noticed layout issues with it. That Microsoft Word is just awful for layout. Like, it does the job, and I have done a video on how to do. I did do an episode of the show on how to do layout in Microsoft Word as well, and there is also a how to use it for Trinity Continuum and other StoryPath games product out there that I wrote, complete with pictures and step-by-step instructions. So if you are interested in community content, I wrote the book on how to do layout in Word. I can claim that, I suppose. But it's not designed for layout, and there's stuff I'd like to fix that I'm just saving for when I do a whole refresh of the book in Publisher. Sounds like having a standard template would be good regardless. Modifying is necessary for the given game would be easier then. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, single NPC, just there to explain how attitude works with words. They escape me like flames on the side of my face. Within the bounds of the world below. So just as a refresh, I guess, for those who don't know, neutral attitude, there's no benefit to it whatsoever. And then attitude is either positive or negative. If you have a positive attitude with a character, if you're trying to influence them, you get +1 social advantage, which usually translates to two enhancement. And on your rolls to influence them. And if you have a negative attitude with the character, they have +1 social advantage when they're making integrity rolls to resist what you're trying to do. Again, usually works out to 2 enhancement. So that was it. Something I did forget, I will freely own up to this during the actual play, during the stream, was that there is a cap to enhancement, which made it so that the social character in the party basically couldn't fail a roll if it was a social roll. That's on me. I forgot there is an enhancement cap, or I believe there is. I might be misremembering. It was something I checked afterwards, and I believe that's what I came across. My need to be correct, but to be correct with evidence to support that is strong right now, and I'm resisting the urge to check the rules and go on a digression. So I'm not going to. I'm going to be the better person than my usual easily distracted self. I included, just as a side note, in the rules, in the adventure write-up, I included 30 feet and 10 meters, because just in case you prefer meters over feet or vice versa. This is from hard-won experience, as it's something that you tend not to think of. So you can probably tell I'm British. And I know, or I expect, that Onyx Path's audience, like most role-playing audiences, skews American. Both countries that use feet, they use the imperial measurements, feet and inches. To my knowledge, anyway. I have a Dutch friend in my weekly game, and it took me 2.5 years to realise he might prefer me to use meters as the unit of measurement. And it turns out he does. So I now try to... I try to ask my players beforehand, before any game, if they would prefer feet, meters, or both. And I... when it is relevant, am starting to try to include the conversion within rules text, so that no one has to do the conversion on the fly. Anyway, so yes, you'll notice, of course, that the read loud text is 4 lines long, 3.5 lines long. It's important to me when it comes to read loud text. I don't know if I necessarily mentioned this during my Pugmire write-up for A Ball to Die For. Having both systems is better than most published games. It's true. Is that, like, read aloud text is important. I believe read aloud text is important, with the caveat that a GM should always paraphrase it or reword it to better suit what they want players to take away from it. But read aloud text gives you that key information. It sets the scene or the location in a way that every table kind of has the same starting experience, and then it goes up gloriously off-piste from there. But it shouldn't be too long. It should give you enough to set the scene, or like a good overview of the location, but that's it. If it's too long, people check out. Here's some bit of read loud text, but I recognize people need it. Well, yeah, that's what I was. That's why I'm like, I will always encourage people to paraphrase it if they want to, or reword it. It's just there as a... I mean... I'm trying to think how best to phrase this for clarity's sake. Obviously, it is an established convention at this point. We hate it. It is an established convention within the industry at this point. I like it as for it, because it gives you that set... As I say, it gives you the seed of the experience from which the scene can grow. But I personally don't use it if I'm running a published adventure. I will ahead of time read the read aloud, and then reproduce it in my own manner, rather than you just read it during the adventure. For me, it just interrupts the flow, and mostly it's interrupting flow, but also it's slightly narratively dissonant because it's not in my voice, if that makes sense. It's not in my narrative voice. So it will convey different information to that which my players are used to getting from my scene setting. But those need summarized read aloud text because it never seems to quite make sense to read as is. Yes, that's the problem. It is a fine art form. Big tell that I didn't do enough prep is if I read the read aloud verbatim. And hey, having that crutch, really useful. But yeah, it's one of the. It is one of those things. And obviously, I only have my echo chambers to experience things with. But it's like with random encounter tables. I appreciate that they're there. I appreciate that some people like them, but the vast majority of people I know don't use them. Same with read aloud text. The vast majority of people, perhaps because most people I know are forever GMs or prefer GMing, and they'll just, they'll have the reword of the read aloud text. They'll put it into their own words to convey what they think is important from the scene. But yeah, it's just weird that we have these established conventions, and they're great tools, they're great aids. I don't want to poo-poo them. I don't want people to think that you are a terrible GM for using them, because you're not. If that is how you have fun GMing, and how your table has fun with you GMing, go for it. It's not necessarily for me, but having those tools there is fantastic for accessibility. And the fewer barriers to entry the hobby has, the better, considering that the Titan of the hobby requires you to buy 3 books. That is all I'm saying on that. I'm going to move on before I get perhaps passionate or incensed. I was about to say I'm really happy that Onyx Path don't require you to buy multiple books for their games, but then I realised Scion has 4 books. Big thoughts on random encounter tables. When done well, they can be amazing exercises in world building, otherwise they're training wheels. Yeah, exactly. If I, just as a slight side note about random encounter tables, and I guess read aloud text for that matter, you can play Scion with just Origin. You're not wrong. You can play with just Origin, and go from there. True. I guess Scion is a unique case, because every other book just has the different tiers of play within the core rulebook, whereas Scion, you kind of need an individual book for the different tiers of play because of its unique premise and setup, and the fact that functionally they are all different games. Anyway, more on Scion. Check out the panels from the VirtualCon that I believe are up on YouTube now. Random encounter tables, read aloud text. I mean, kind of discussed read aloud to death at this point, but random encounter tables certainly, as Flashcage Plays pointed out, when done well, yes, fantastic world building, and they're useful if you are struggling to populate encounters or for something to do. The trouble is, it's hard to fall into the trap, or for me at least, because of the way my neurodivergence works. Like, I find it difficult to diverge. If something is written, that is the way it has to be. Right? I find it difficult to diverge from that. And a lot of the time, I know it's in my own head. I am the GM. I am the final arbiter of the rules. I can do whatever I want, within reason, as long as everyone's having fun. But with random encounter tables, if you are using them, and again, no harm in using them, they are good tools. If you are stuck, if the inspiration is running dry, roll a couple of times, see what you like. See if you get anything you like. And also, of course, you can just change the results. If it says there are 3 of animal X in this encounter, find a different animal that better suits what you're trying to do with the encounter. I've talked before at length on encounters should serve a purpose. They shouldn't be there just for something to do. You should be always world building or progressing the narrative, or progressing a narrative, or just as a world building with encounters. What really irks me is you're traveling, going to roll on this table so you have something to do while you're traveling. It's just that, to me, isn't... To me, I cannot stress that enough. To me, isn't good GMing or storytelling in general. But again, I'm story over rules, so yeah. It's true there, but yeah, Demigod is just a different game from Origin. It really is. It really is. Sorry, I keep looking to the right because we're talking about Scion and some of Scion books are. I will eventually have God in my sticky little hands, and my collection of core Scion books will be complete. Random encounter tables, read aloud text. Yes, so I've included, obviously, a lot of... anyone who watched the Pugmire streams, plural, or who buys the book will see that it says, I believe, read or paraphrase in the introduction or something like that, the italicized text. I will, for this and going forwards, probably elaborate on that, encourage GMs to make it their own. But this is what I view as the core of the scene setting, but after you've read over the scene, you know, make it your own. I guess if I were to distill any nugget of wisdom from this long, rambling conversation and discussion about read aloud text, if you are going to include it in your adventures, again, I do it as a tool, as an accessibility feature for people who don't just want to be dumped with, here is the key information from the scene, go with it. It's kind of... Not only should the read aloud text set the scene in terms of here's a brief description of where you are, it should also set the scene in terms of this is an introduction to the key point of the scene. So the read aloud text I've got here, that first three lines, they set the location of the scene. That half line sets the key part of the scene, which is the conversation with Merle and learning more about what's happening. I'm going to hydrate. But then also, because this isn't a traditional adventure, and I do have the opportunity to write things in my own way, to lay them out in a way I find personally useful, and also to be to give people the freedom to make the game their own. I also should get better at including this in the introduction. I'll probably add it to the Pugmire one as well and update that file because it's important to note, is that I'm not writing this like I would write a formal adventure. If you want a formal adventure, pick up Begin Again for Trinity Continuum Core, pick up the Rude Awakening, A Rude Awakening for Scion, pick up the Radford Estate for Chronicles of Darkness. All of those are written to mimic the style of a published adventure. You know, it's like, here is some read aloud text, here is a description of how the scene plays, here are dice rolls, here is all of the relevant information you may need in the sidebar, very much by the numbers. Side note, it's very difficult not to mention an adventure I've written for a book that's coming out. It has been announced, but I don't want to talk about it because things could happen between now and then. Boy, would I look foolish. Suffice to say, I'm very proud of that adventure, and I would very much like to run it on stream at some point. But the book has to come out first. These adventures are... This is written in a way where I hope, at least, a GM will be able to take this adventure, read the scenes, and because the scenes are essentially distilled into just their key, to their key information, with no connective tissue, so to speak, they will be able to take it and make it their own, which is why I have written it with commentary and with advice, rather than, as I say, the traditional adventure writing format. Obviously, it's quite similar, because the point of the traditional writing format is to convey the same information. But this allows me to do it in a slightly more informal way, which, particularly when I'm writing for a con, for example, or an actual play where I have a defined time limit, in which I have to produce the adventure, edit the notes to make sure I can use them, and that the whole thing is coherent, and then run it. Having this more informal writing and layout style, incredibly useful for me. Obviously, your mileage may vary, and if you are watching this, listening to it, what have you, and would like to disagree, please do. That is what the comment section and the chat room on Twitch is for, obviously. If you're watching this after the fact on Twitch, I won't see your comments, but you can put them on YouTube. Yeah, so I realised I had never really addressed why this and the Pugmire game and that they came from Classified are written in an atypical manner, in an atypical fashion. I apologise. However, all of that said, mentioning the introduction of the attitude system, you know, it's a throwaway comment. Like, you explain that you explain the benefits. That's it. And then the investigation system, again, this is a con game. It's a one shot. It's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't need to be a complex investigation. Not like I did for my Scion adventure. So it's just, there are 2 core clues. There are 2 pieces of evidence. That's it. And the way that the system handles it is they're always going to get the core clues anyway. So even if you don't explicitly call out that it's an investigation, in terms of mechanically speaking, an investigation, your players don't need to know that because they already have the core clues. They have the leads. They have the information they need to take away from the scene just by looking in the right place, doing the right thing, having the right scale dots on their character sheet. So yeah, I mean, the 2 leads here were unavoidable. Just by looking at the pillar, you can find them. Evidence side of things, that's always going to be more up for interpretation as the GM, purely because yes, I can provide 2 associated pieces of evidence to it. If a player does want to investigate further, I just took the 2 leads that were there and get assigned 2 dice rolls to investigate those leads further to gain more evidence. The first one, the first one is foreshadowing the conflict awaiting the players of should we forget or should we remember by returning a missing memory. And then the second piece of evidence is foreshadowing the conflict ahead. Someone has cut themselves doing this thing. They almost certainly wanted to do it quickly or were doing it passionately because it's something they firmly believe in. So that's alluding to the conflict that has broken out in the settlement that the players are heading inexorably to. Sorry, 1 second. And then moving on from that, it's kind of just hey, here's what Myrl knows. Can't remember what my established pronunciation was. As well as kind of foreshadowing more about what's happening in the town. With any NPC conversation in any of the things I write, whether this atypical writing style or the more traditional adventure writing style, my aim is just to convey the bare minimum of what the character knows, and to give them kind of the bare minimum personality, mostly because that, to me, again, allows the GM to make the character their own. to provide scope for the character to return in the future if they want to, because they're not inherently tied to a location most of the time. If you notice under the cast down here, I've given a personality trait in that they're scared. It's why, and then why they are here, and also why they're scared. My aim was to provide enough information that should the players talk to this poor elf about their history and why they're here, but the GM has enough information to allude to a backstory so that they don't feel one-dimensional without too much backstory, and therefore, again, restricting the character and making them mine and not the GM's. And ultimately, the scene went well. They did more interacting with Mile than I thought they would. And as I say, the social character bulldozed forwards with attitude, improvement, and again, trying to keep the spoilers as little, trying to spoil as little as possible, because I think you should watch the actual play when it goes live. I think it might be live. I can't remember. But the only really reflective thing I would do, like on reflection, I don't think it's worth putting into advice, because it's more kind of just how I feel the session went after the fact, rather than how I feel the adventure writing is. It's just that, one, remembering the enhancement cap, kind of important, and two, I would perhaps make Mile less passive. Because I wanted the players to focus more on the investigation after they'd invested a chunk of time talking to this poor elf. I did perhaps make them more passive than I should have done, but in an effort to encourage the players to investigate the pillar and foreshadow what's about to happen. But at the same time, obviously, while there is railroading in that they're always going to get from scene 1 to scene 2 to scene 3, because that's just the way that the locations are spread out geographically. I would also, I didn't want to force them into the investigation. I didn't want to put them to be in a position where I said, "Hey, you've had the social side, there's also an investigative aspect to the scene," because I would never do that. If the players aren't investigating, to me that says they don't want to investigate. They've already got the leads they need from just being in the right place, doing the right things, and then the extra information is what it is. Fortunately, they did also then investigate, and I took that time for Mile to piece out. But if I were to do it again, I would perhaps have Mile be slightly more active a participant in the conversation, and maybe give them more information that would lead them to investigating the pillar, or provide more context around the pillar. But I think the scene went well overall. Nothing really to say in terms of advice, beyond just, when introducing Mile, explicitly state their attitude is neutral, and explain the attitude system. And then the town. Final scene of the adventure. Going to be a combat, as I said, because my personal feeling, is that if you're playing a one-shot, especially if you're playing a one-shot that you're likely to not return to the system for a while, if ever, or if you're trying to get someone to buy your game, just end on a high note. And a lot of the time, there's something very satisfying about ending on a heroic combat. Obviously, it depends on the game. But even with things like Call of Cthulhu, let's say even with horror games, there's always going to be a climax of some kind to the story, whether that's preventing a ritual from happening, or stealing a relevant artifact. There's always going to be some kind of big climactic scene that everyone's going to be talking about after the game, and where the stakes perhaps are introduced for the first time. Obviously, up until this point in the one shot, there's not really been any stakes. Yes, the players had some memory issues. Yes, the husks in the first scene could have gone poorly, and they could have done a serious amount of damage, but they didn't, as it turns out. But there were no real stakes. The husks have 1 health, and are there just to explain how the combat system works. Whereas the town, it has a combat scene, to just to demonstrate, as the commentary says, how different archetypes function in action scenes. Some archetypes lend themselves more to social stuff. That's fine. Some to investigative. That's fine. But if you have a combat build, up until this point in this one shot, you have not had a chance to shine. And this was where I wanted everyone. I wanted to give people a chance to shine if they haven't been able to in the previous couple of scenes. Also, just through running a wide variety of games in systems for a variety of purposes, some players just find combat more interesting. Nothing wrong with that. If that's where you prefer your game to play, that is fine. I will try to accommodate that in my one-shots whenever I can. Again, read aloud text to set the scene, followed by a block of information about kind of the nucleus of the scene and any special things to note about the scene, and then more read aloud text as a summary of a, like, here's what happens at the end of the adventure. Again, if you need it, it's there. If you don't need it, you can make your own. You can ignore it completely and use this as the starting point for another adventure. I know in this text it says read the following and read the following aloud. That's the joy of editing. I will make it all standardized, and again in the introduction probably have a caveat about using it only if you need it. If you want to make it your own, etc, etc, etc. Yes, I also provided a couple of alternative endings here. The first is they go into the town, they deal with the conflict, they pick a side and deal with the conflict that way, or they choose to leave without going into the town and run into a monster that just hunts the tunnels nearby. Because again, I just wanted a combat scene. This is what it is. I wanted a chance for everyone to shine, and that if they choose to not get involved in the conflict that by now they know is happening, that's on them. It's player choice. Ironically, the ending is the least railroady bit of the entire adventure, but there we are, because you have multiple choice that actually has meaning. But there we go. I do need to include some advice here about advice. If your players choose to resolve the conflict peacefully, allow them to do so. The conflict has arisen because members of the community disagree on how best to handle the powers of the lake. Not because they are inherently bad people or inherently violent people. The conflict has arisen because members of the community disagree on how best to handle the powers of the lake. And that same magic has pushed them towards violence. Not because they are inherently violent people. If they choose this route, and there is time, run the Iraq leader encounter, but lower its health, I guess. Yep. Lower its health to ensure the encounter finishes on time. So there we go. There's like a permission, if you will, from me to you as the person running this adventure, that it is okay if your players choose to resolve the conflict peacefully. Allow, I guess, any roles to resolve matters should be no easier than difficulty 3, and possible complications could include splinter factions, continuing the conflict, characters being asked to remain behind to ensure the peace holds, I guess. To ensure the peace holds, or similar. Just a small bit of guidance about what could happen if the players choose, as you see, the unexpected approach. In hindsight, because this is what, it's full spoiler, that's what my players did. In hindsight, probably should expect players to choose the peaceful result, but again, because this was a con game written for a specific purpose, I wasn't sure how long it would take to get to this point. I wasn't sure if there was the time to allow them to talk things out, and if there hadn't been the time to do so, I would fully have held my hand up and said that, were we not running out of time, I would allow you to do this, but in the interests of time and gameplay demonstration, would you mind picking a side in this conflict? And again, this is said this is like 4 times in a row. This is where running an actual play is an inherently different experience to running a home game, because you are doing it for an audience, and you do have, admittedly I have a time limit for my home games, but you're running for an audience, you often have a time limit that you cannot stretch, and you're running for a purpose as well, so it is perfectly fine, at least in my eyes, to take a moment now and then to step back from your role as the GM adjudicating the game, and just instead kind of advocate for the game in a way, to tell your players that right now I would love to follow what you're doing to its logical narrative conclusion, but right now there's no time to do that. Would you be okay doing this instead, to highlight this bit of the game? Because there's already been a social scene. There has already been a chance for the social character to shine. Again, enhancement cap, very important to remember. And I just wanted to allow other characters their moment in the spotlight. There's I believe it's in the Scion Companion, a player questionnaire that I use for pretty much every game, and it includes not actual plays for cons, because time more than anything. Just as a side note, because as I mentioned at the start of the episode, I can't speak for the other cons, but for the virtual con, because people volunteer their time to play in the games, having been involved running tech for a couple of them, a lot of the time people, understandably so, kind of leave any prep for the con to the last minute when it comes to character or things. At least it's my understanding based on having run tech for it for a couple of years. So they don't necessarily know their character. They may not even make a character themselves and fully intend to, but run out of time and need a pre-gen at the last minute. So I don't use it for cons, but for my home games, if anyone wants to hire me, I am available for hire at rates both reasonable and negotiable. Even though I start planning the con in January. Yes, Travis, but we're on the ball. I mean, role playing is literally my career, so it's not. I find it very easy to square away time to make a character for an actual play, if we're not doing session 0. But I don't know, people have these things called lives. It sounds fake, I know, but some people actually have stuff they do outside of role playing. It's a weird concept. Where was I? Yeah, something that I do with my home games. If you hire me, again, rates both reasonable and negotiable. I do this as well. It's like the two standout questions are: what on your character sheet do you want me to highlight? What do you want me to spotlight your character can do, and what do you want to see in the game? What do you want to do in the game? Because that's player buy-in right there. You give people a reason to stick around. It tells them that you're invested in their character, and it gives them some ownership of the game. And so that's why I wrote this adventure in the way I did, and why I tried to do a similar thing with Classified. But the trouble with They Came From games is the players have so many ways to throw a spanner in the works that it's really hard to predict what they're going to do because of the cinematics. Which it's fun. It's just, it lends itself to a more reactive gameplay style. It's just a completely different style of game. But that's why there was the social scene for the social character. That's why there was an investigation sequence for the more studious characters, let's say. And then at the end, a fighting scene for people who just like to fight or who want to experience that side of the game. And obviously, with most player parties, you'll have a mix of people who like these things anyway, so it does work out to just have them in. But it's as just hopefully you'll have picked up on this, but they're pretty generic. Any character would shine at these. If I knew in advance, enough in advance to write the adventure with the characters in mind, what the characters would be. Would I do things differently? Yes, I would. Probably have kept roughly the same through line. Again, with only a 3-hour time slot. Got to stop saying again. With only a 3-hour time slot, there's only so much I can do, and to get a complete, satisfying story told. But yeah, sure, I could have admittedly tweaked it here and there. The community could have been larger and allowed some more hustles to go on. The community I could have had the community, the town be scene 2, and then scene 3 take place, and had the players take part in the build up to the conflict erupting. But hindsight 2020 and all that. This is the adventure I wrote. It's generic enough that it should work for every party. Everyone should have fun playing it. I've hopefully included advice that will allow people to tailor it and make it their own. The introduction, as I say, will include stuff about making the read aloud text your own. Yeah, I think that covers it. largely the same would be said. I mean, I went over the classified one last time as well, but the classified one is largely the same. There's, again, the trouble with trouble is the wrong word. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it to pull it up. Nexus steadfastness. The main difference being, as I say, the sheer variety of things that cinematics allow They Came From players to do makes it incredibly difficult to prepare anything concrete. There is a sequence in Wallace and Gromit, The Wrong Trousers, I think it's The Wrong Trousers, where I've referenced this before and I'll reference it again, but where Gromit, the dog, is on an electric train chasing Feathers McGraw, the penguin, and is just putting the track down immediately in front of the train as the chase continues. And that, to me, is gemming in a nutshell. But with They Came From, it's gemming in a nutshell even more. Because the players have so many ways to balk reality with cinematics. Because, yes, there are archetypes that are like, hey, this is a fighter, this is a scholar, this is the party face. But they're less clearly defined within that, and can be played in, like, you can have a smart fighter, for example. Gasp, what a concept. It's harder to produce something like that, so because I don't want to spend another stream talking about this, because everything went off-piste, and there's no real advice I can give for scene 2, because they skipped most of it, because we ran out of time. It would be more that trying to think how to phrase that. If I were to write this adventure again, because it's harder to write for a generic. They Came From has so much variation in character archetype. Don't get me wrong, the word below, within the archetypes and the character creation, you can produce a wide variety of characters, but because it is evocative of OSR style role-playing, grim, gritty, dark fantasy style role-playing, horror fantasy, sorry. And you do have the standard tropes of adventurers to play with. It's a very specific gameplay style, whereas They Came From Classified is just, here is a spy show or spy movie, go. And you can tell so many different spy plots, and so many different levels of competency in the enemy organization, and the players for that matter, that it's a much less defined game style. I mentioned this at the start, that there's more variation within They Came From as a game, just in general, not just classified. That it's harder to write an adventure for and not expect the players to go off the rails with. I wrote the 3 scenes kind of expecting something to go wrong, and it did, and that was fine. Again, I didn't know what players I was running for. I didn't know what characters I was running for, sorry, so I had no idea what abilities they would possess as characters. I had no idea what archetypes they would be fulfilling. And so I made what I thought would be a fairly good generic adventure, but with enough flexibility within it to account for anything, and luckily I did. But I did, to be fair, the advice I gave at the start of The Wood Below held true. I didn't write it down because, fortunately, you don't have to. They Came From Classified because everything's in the mechanics. But I did look at the core themes and vibes of the game, and it's just evoking the spy genre of the 1960s and 70s, etc. So gloriously dramatic villains, explosions, probably some kind of countdown sequence at some point, which I've made an entire new mechanic for. Monologues, drama, more explosions, ideally a last-minute escape. But obviously within that framework of these are the core ideals of the game that I'm going to explore, there's a lot you can do with that. I don't know why both of my games for the Virtual Con were revolved around water. Just worked out that way. I mean, the World Below was just because I was like, hey, I like the story of Lethe, the River of Memory. What if that was a thing in the World Below? How'd that work out? And then this one was just, I just like underwater bases as a villain there. I think it's a good trope for it's a classic trope for a reason. Also, it presents a necessarily bounded gameplay arena, which allows you to limit to some extent what your players will do. But you know, it's a con game; they don't need that much freedom of choice. And even like they had full freedom of choice, and they still broke it. So you know, there we are. I'm acutely aware of the time. I'm just trying to think if there's anything I specifically want to say about my classified adventure. Anyone who watched it and then buys the adventure will see that I immediately went off-piste because I realized it made no sense that the villain wouldn't have the key to their restraints at all, because it's just, yeah. So I need to rework the adventure around to him releasing them. The original idea was just to get people rolling dice to see if they could break out of their restraints. That was it. That was the only reason he didn't have the key. But then, it was just like, why wouldn't he have the key? So I'll figure something out. I just like the 3 rolls to get out of the room, if necessary. That was why it was there. The halls was designed as a modular thing anyway. That they could visit in any order. That was why it's scene 2A, B, C, D with some rules connecting them. I mean, they didn't get through all of them anyway. So I just... In fact, they only went to one of them. Because we were running out of time at that point. And then I mentioned last time that they went to the end first. I guess, yeah, for people who haven't seen the last stream, because it's up on Onyx Path's YouTube channel, I'm called out that my players used one of the cinematics, establishing shot, I believe it is, to end up at the end of the adventure. So I just remixed the adventure so that they didn't complete it within the first hour and a half of gameplay. But the Rocket Bay is designed as the climactic fight for combat focus to highlight combat focused characters, as there are like the power plant, for example, is intended to be to introduce complex milestones, and as is the maintenance bay for that matter. But the maintenance bay and the power plant are for characters who prefer to interact with technology and like more brainy things. But also to introduce the fact that you don't have to pair technology with a mental arena attribute. You can pair it with dexterity, for example, because you know what you're doing, but you still have to use your hands to do it. Radio room was just sneaking and the possibility of something going wrong. The rec room was just hey, here's a really simple investigation that will pay off if you follow it, and if you don't, that is fine. The lead, to use the World Below's terminology, I can't remember the exact terminology from Classified, just look behind the bar, you find a key card. That helps you out later. If you investigate the room, you find evidence that you can then follow to get a free weapon. That was super simple investigation, but easy enough to introduce. But as I've said several times now, it's hard to predict what players will do in a classified game, especially with the reality warping powers of cinematics, because it's not designed to be realistic. That I expected something would go wrong. Not wrong, but that they would go in an unanticipated direction, let's say. Although I should have anticipated it, as I gave them those cinematics. Yeah. So hopefully this has been relatively useful as a retrospective on how my con games went, and if if they were successful or not from my perspective. As I've said several times, or as you've probably picked up if you're here at the start of the stream, I'm going to need to put my fidget toy down so I can grab links and things. The Monday meeting notes, as ever, the important place to go. With the big ticket item being that, assuming I can do maths correctly in my head, in an hour and 10 minutes from now, there will be another stream on this channel. For those watching on YouTube, twitch.tv/the Onyx Path. I always put the link in the video description anyway. Where Hiromi Kota, the creative lead for Scion, and a bunch of the writers on the Mythic Shards book will be doing a kickoff stream for the Backer Kit crowdfunding campaign, talking about the book and stretch goals and all of that good stuff. I'm sure that will be a fantastic time. Highly recommend you check it out if you have any interest in Scion. Mythic Shards itself is a collection of micro settings for your Scion games. Examples being things like Scions are superheroes, or Scions are now illegal, or all of the apocalypse has happened and all of the gods are dead, but Scions continue to exist and have to define what it means to be a Scion in this new world. If you are interested in that, tomorrow 2 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. European, 7 p.m. UK, is an actual play of After the End, which is the post-apocalyptic shard from the book. I'm in that. I'm running tech for it, so if there are any tech problems, I apologise in advance. I'm also playing, and I'm also going to be a mod in chat, so behave. But if you want to see how one of the shards could play out, definitely check that out. Apologise. Unrelated to Scion, more Curseborn stuff is incoming. The Ashcan will be available for its final release form, print on demand, and PDF on Wednesday at DriveThruRPG. Today, and then every Tuesday and Thursday for the next couple of months, we'll have some Curseborn information on the blog. New Curseborn website is in the works, or is here soon, I should say. Or is live now, I think. Or will be soon. Christmas in July style. Most of Onyx Path's catalogue is reduced by some degree. Yeah, so the schedule, I realise... Oh no, I did the schedule, never mind. Now, obviously, this show, all times in Eastern, at noon today, the Mythic Shards kickoff stream. At 8 p.m, At the Gates New Game Plus, which, again, I believe is Awkward GM's game prep for an At the Gates game. I could be wrong about that. Tomorrow, 2 p.m, After the End, Scion Actual Play. Tomorrow 9 p.m, Curious Cats and Mouse Mysteries and Secrets, and then Sunday 5 p.m, Trinity Continuum Aeon Asaya. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I apologise for mispronunciations. If you missed it, the Squeaks in the Deep Companion was released last week, which I believe is the last expected title for first edition Pugmire. I could be wrong. Please do not quote me on that. Anything else? I think that was really it. If you have enjoyed this show, but you came in halfway through, please be aware that it will go up theoretically next Tuesday on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ComradeBubbles. It's the A in the circle for the @ symbol. If you want to watch it before then, you can subscribe to twitch.tv/theonyxpath. And 99% sure Squeeze Companions in the books with Pugmire. Oh, good. I'm not speaking nonsense. Yeah, you can subscribe to this Twitch channel, and you gain access to the videos on demand instantly, which will also give you access to all of the VODs from the con and things of that nature as well, while they're still active before they go up on YouTube. If you don't want to spend money but have an Amazon Prime account, or any more money because you have to pay for the Prime account, you can link it to a Twitch account for a Prime Gaming account, and you get one free subscription per month, currently at least, with that, which gives you the same benefits of a Tier 1 subscription. It gives the channel more or less the same benefits of a Tier 1 subscription. And yeah, you get video on demand, you get emotes, you get access to, I believe this is the Discord channel, exclusive for subscribers. Could be wrong about that, haven't checked in a while. If you have liked my face for whatever reason, I can be found most places on the internet, apart from X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. But I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Tumblr, I'm on co-host. It's Comrade Bubbles there. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Comrade Bubbles. I do video game content, but I'll be there somewhere in the next half hour for a few hours, an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm continuing to play Assassin's Creed 2. But I'm always happy to talk about role-playing things of varying kinds. I think that's all of my socials. Yeah, I will be back in 2 weeks with this show. If you are on the Onyx Path Discord server, I'll make a post to this effect. Maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow. I'm thinking that the next, because as I mentioned, thinking of community content for the next season of the show is just freaking me out right now. I don't know why. Like, I know I need to write a follow-up to my Scion adventure. I know I need to write a hero adventure for it. And I love Scion. It's just, it's one of those, it's a big thing right now with everything else that's going on in my life. So I might put up a post asking for people to just ask questions for GM tips, and I'll just do a GM tip stream. From my perspective, obviously, it's not exhaustive or authoritative in any way, but I was going to save this for the 100th episode, because my first episode on the channel was GM tips, but I can't think of anything, and also for my 100th episode, I might contact some other creators and see if we can get some kind of roundtable going for community content. A non-Onyx Path Virtual Con community content panel might be cool for my 100th episode. That won't be for a while yet, though. Another good, 6 months, I expect, based on how things have been going. But I'll be back on 2 weeks for this show, so that'll be the 30th. But all being well, of July, all being well, I'll be back Friday the 26th of July, so a week on Friday. You'd love to participate? Fantastic. I'll see what I can do. Yeah, Friday the 26th, with Exalted Essence, with the Exalted Essence actual play, session 1, where things kick off and probably go wrong almost immediately. For those who weren't there in the session 0, actually I didn't mention this in the session 0 at all. My character concept is, what if Cinnamon Roll but Necromancer? It's not a terribly new concept, but it's one I've not been able to play around with, and I just thought it would be cool to play a very innocent Necromancer. So we'll see where it goes from there. But it's Exalted, it's going to be larger than life, it's going to be very anime, and it's going to be nice getting back to playing Exalted. There's also Exalted Essence, which makes it even more tempting, because it's easier to follow and play. Not that there's anything wrong with 3rd edition Exalted. I just, again, lots of stuff going on right now, and 3rd edition is a lot, with a capital A and a capital L. However, I'm rambling. My blood sugar has dropped. I need to go and grab a snack so that I can even focus on speaking for my stream. Thank you all so much for being here. Hopefully you come back. If you are new to the channel, please do consider following it and checking out the other content on the stream. If you do like the more behind the scenes aspect, obviously the writers kickoff stream for the Mythic Shards campaign that starts in about an hour's time, completely up your alleyway, up your street, whatever, however you want to use the saying. So come back for that. But until next time, please do stay safe, please do stay healthy, please do stay wholesome. Much love to you all. Goodbye. And stick around for the post roll to see the other things coming up on the channel. I'll be in chat for a few minutes if you have any lingering questions.